think, well, you know, you can find on YouTube the Jackson 5's audition for Motown, which they videotaped and has been posted ever, you know, in recent years. And they do a James Brown song in their audition for Berry Gordy, and they also, Michael literally does some moments of doing James Brown. So from the beginning, he really modeled himself to some degree on James Brown. And I also would think, I think that he was probably James Brown's greatest disciple. I mean, Prince, lots of people, you know, in other ways, Al Sharpton is a great disciple of James Brown. But I think Michael Jackson, in terms of being able to dance and just present himself in all dimensions as this great entertainer, really owes a lot and transformed what he learned from James Brown.
The interesting thing is that this Tammy show footage we're talking about, and I know that Michael would go down to Paul Surratt's research video, or Paul would come up to Michael's house actually and bring that kind of stuff up to Michael and show it to him.
Yeah.
But that piece of footage seems to have influenced a lot of people, and how when it wasn't out, you know, how did people? I mean, did James' performance just melt into people's minds, or how'd that work?
You know, it's funny. I mean, the whole process, it was filmed in electronovision, which was a way of transferring videotape back in the day to a motion picture size screen. And once it was off the market, yeah, it didn't have much display after that. I mean, when I went to college in the late '70s, early '80s, it would come to town on the film circuits, you know, once a year or so. You could see it, but yeah, it was really a word of mouth thing where people that had seen it told other people had seen it. You know, Bruce Springsteen talks about seeing it somehow from a friend who had a reel of it or something, and it was one of those things where anybody who saw James Brown and the Tammy Show never forgot it, and always told somebody else about it, and it's had this like. This mysterious mystique about it. And you know, there were interviews with Michael Jackson where someone brings up James Brown and he'll ask them in the interview, do you have it? Do you have that show? Can you show me that footage? I mean, he's asking the interviewer, can you show it to me right now, because it's really great, isn't it? Yeah, it's and now, you know, now these days, you know, public television stations use it as a fundraiser. They show it now. It's on all the time, so it's a whole different thing. But it hasn't lost. Especially, I like the Rolling Stones performance too. There's a lot of great things in the whole show, but especially for the James Brown moments where he does the cape act. That was the first time America saw James Brown doing "Please, Please, Please," falling to his knees, and his valet dropping the cape and saying, "Oh man, come on, you're going to kill yourself," you know, trying to bring him off the stage, and he throws it off, and he comes back on, and he will not be stopped until he's past exhaustion. That alone is, you know, it's like watching a religious rite or something, and I think that's what people most of all talk about when they talk about that James Brown Tammy Show.
And then there's this shift. You know, he was really popular. Like in 1965, he was benefiting. His singles were really selling a lot on the Americans, you know, top 10 or whatever. Mm. Then he makes a shift in music. I mean, and I'd really like you to explain how that happens, because by 1968, there's another televised performance the day after Martin Luther King was shot, and he performs in Boston. But by that time, the tone and temper of his music has drastically changed. Some of the musicians, Maceo Parker stands out, but look, can you tell us, take it from Out of Sight era to, you know, funk?
Well, I think the main thing that you're alluding to, I suspect, is James Brown wanted to matter and to reach the greatest possible audience. And in the 1960s, he hugely succeeded in doing that. And at the same time, in the 1960s, you could not help but notice what was going on in the newspapers, in the world, in the civil rights. You know, for someone who toured the South in a bus, he would pull into a bus stop in the South, and there would be freedom riders coming by, getting beat up in the stop he was, you know, having a cup of coffee in or something. He was hugely aware of it. African American entertainers were asked and expected and felt compelled to have an opinion and to become spokespeople for what was going on everywhere. So James Brown was pulled in different directions to reach everybody and to be apolitical in a sense, or carefully monitor his political remarks and to be a black spokesman, and he was both. And when Dr. King was assassinated, Brown had already had a series of dates, or at least one night in Boston, and it was that night that King was killed. Everybody knew what was already happening in the streets that afternoon. The mayor of Boston asked him first, please don't perform. Well, that wouldn't work. They wanted to keep kids off the street, most of all, protesters. The idea was to keep violence from happening in the streets. They wanted to keep people from being downtown Boston where the show was. But Brown realized, most of all, that if you cancel the show, people are going to go down there expecting there to be a show. Then they're going to be mad for one more reason, and they're already going to be downtown with their tickets or expecting to buy tickets. That didn't work. And the mayor of Boston, well, other people had the idea really to air it on the Boston Public Television show for free to keep people at home watching James Brown on TV. And, you know, Brown was worried about being paid. He was someone who never performed for free. You know, I mean, he'd been ripped off many times in his life. There was some negotiation there. The performance is amazing. And it's a night when nobody knew what was going to happen. The mayor of Boston, who introduces Brown on the stage, talked later about how Kevin White, and I'm sure he didn't even know who James Brown was. He calls him Jimmy in the films. And I think he thought he was introducing Jim Brown, the football player, actor, or something. But he talked about how he thought, you know, maybe be out on the stage with this audience out there. Maybe this is the night I die. People in Brown's band thought, they told reporters later, you know, they thought maybe they would be shot in the bus heading to the downtown Boston. Nobody knew. Brown, an amazing master of crowd control and of moving an audience and knowing what audiences were thinking before they knew it, really. He had them in the palm of his hand. And there's this amazing moment you can see on YouTube where fans come up, teenage African-American fans come up on the stage, jump up, and they want to be with their hero. Suddenly the Boston white cops who are flanking the stage, they don't like that so much, and they come out there, and the floodlights go up, and it could have been a disaster, and it was broadcast live all across Boston. So everything they were fearing for was about to happen. Boston cops. Brown just gets everybody to stop. He tells the cops he doesn't need their help. He tells the kids to please be respectful and sit down. He just wants to do a show for them, and they're making it impossible. Somehow he gets them all back in their seats, and he goes back into, oh gosh, I forget what the song is, but you know, he barely loses the beat. He was a master performer, and he saved a lot that night, I think.
He is dad.